States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Did anybody have any adjustments or changes to the agenda? Somebody like to make a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll move to adopt.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We have adopted the agenda. Approval of the minutes. Did anybody find any changes that need to be made to the minutes from the last meeting? Okay. A motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Public comment for items not on the agenda. Did anybody come to talk to us about anything that's not already on the agenda? Okie doke. We can move on. Okay, we will move to the public hearing for 17-1172, 1973 Yountville Crossroad, from which I will have to recuse myself. So McCann, it's all yours.
Perfect.
Am I good to go?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Zoning Design Review Board. Tonight, you have before you a design review and variance application for a new single-family residence and a detached garage located in 1973 Yountville Crossroad. The subject parcel is a 4,012 square foot vacant lot that also has, with the exception of a garage right now that the applicant proposes to demolish as part of this development. There is a 24-foot wide easement that serves as a shared driveway for the properties of 6816 Yount Street, which is the duplex right there on the corner of Yount and Yountville Crossroad, as well as this proposed one. In 2007, it was originally one parcel, but it was split in 2007, and that easement was created to provide access for both parcels. The applicant proposes to construct a 2,194 square foot single family residence with a detached 200 square foot garage. I note that there was a typo in the original staff report that said the house was bigger than that. It is not. It is 2,194 square feet shown. I think the original one showed closer to 3,500. That is not the size of the house. It is 2,194. The residence would include 990 square feet of basement space, 990 square feet on the main floor, and 214 square feet on the second floor. The applicant has also included in the plans a second floor plan, an alternative second floor plan that would make the second floor 274 square feet. However, by doing that, that would push them over on floor area ratio and would require a variance, and I'll talk more on the variance as we get there. Now, the overall design of the exterior of the home includes painted wood board and batten siding, white painted wood windows and trim, painted wood shingle siding on the second floor with a composition shingle tile roof. The foundation of the house would be concrete with stucco. While the duplex parking was approved when it was initially installed, it would be completed in conjunction with this project by installing a trellis on the duplex side that would provide for 2 covered spots. Now, ultimately, the analysis that goes into this project falls on a few different points. First off is design review. As with all designs and single-family residential projects, when they come in, design review findings are required. Staff is of the opinion that the overall design is consistent with the look and feel and the intent of the Yountville Design Ordinance. The use of the painted board and batten siding, complemented with the painted wood shingle single siding on the second floor, provides a good transition from the county unincorporated area approaching Yountville and then entering shortly after the Old Town residential area. Overall, staff is of the opinion that the design is consistent with the design criteria. Now, and included in the staff report are design review findings after that effect. Now, one of the other issues relates to the parking that's required on the site. As you know, every dwelling unit requires 2 parking spaces. Both have to be screened off street, and at least one needs to be covered. As shown on the diagram above, 6 parking spaces are located adjacent to this driveway easement. 4 of them located on the existing duplex side, and 2 of them next to the proposed house, one of them being in a garage there on the southern end. One of the elements that is important to take a look at is to see if cars can adequately access each of these parking spaces. And as the applicant has submitted, every spot can be easily accessible with no more than a 3-point turn if they wish to turn around. So the garage is accessible this way using a turnaround spot at the end of the driveway. Spot 2 is that way. Spots 3, 4, and 5 from the duplex can simply be accessed that way. And spot 6 would also take advantage of the no parking turnaround spot at the end of the driveway. The requirement that 2 spots must be covered is satisfied by the 1 garage by the proposed house, and spots 4 and 5, which would be located under a soon-to-be constructed trellis, proposed trellis here. Now, the fun stuff. Along with this application is a request for several variances. These variances include the house itself. By code, the building should be set back at least 5 feet from the easement line, but is actually currently residing directly on the easement line, 5 feet from the property line. The garage, also by code, all structures should be set back at least 5 feet from a property or easement line, and the garage is located directly on the property line, which is within the easement. Accessibility may be improved with the garage set back to at least the easement line, consistent with the house, although the turning diagrams show here that there is still a clear out of travel for the affected parking spaces. So that is up for discussion by the ZDRB, along with the variance that a garage be separated from the house. Now, by code, there needs to be at least 6 feet of room between any 2 structures, like a detached garage and a house, and here the applicant is showing 5 feet of room. Now, however, if the garage or house were to move in order to create 6 feet of space, either the size of the buildings would need to be modified, or the garage would therefore encroach on the rear setback, or the house would encroach on the front setback. These plans have been shown to the fire department, and overall they are of approval regarding that setback, that it doesn't create any kind of danger regarding the space between the house and the garage. The likely scenario is that maybe thicker firewall or sprinklers would be set up in the garage just for an extra safety precaution, which would be handled during the building permit stage. The other variances applied for regard the floor area ratio. The applicant has included an alternate second floor plan that would make the second floor bedroom and bathroom larger, and staff is unable to produce any findings that would support that variance, since the findings have to do with uniqueness of the property and not of any development caused by the applicant themselves. Then the last variance is regarding the fact that this is a 2-story building. Now, what wasn't initially included in the staff report, and so you have before you revised versions of these variance findings. They're also available on the table at the side there by the door in case any members of the audience want to look at these findings. Section 18 of the Municipal Code states that no more than 50% of any single-family dwelling units on any given block are permitted to be 2-story. Now, the subject parcel happens to be on a block that only has 6 parcels between Yount Street and Mesa Court, 2 of which already contain multifamily dwellings, the Crossroads HOA and the duplex that is here before you as well. The subject parcel is vacant, and the remaining 3 parcels all contain 2-story homes. However, because then more than 50% of the block already contains 2-story homes, The ZDRB may still approve a two-story house, but would be required to make findings. The findings before you reflect both, should the ZDRB choose to approve them, findings related to the setbacks variances as well as the two-story building variance. Elements of the findings may be approved and others can be discarded or modified to based on the conversation that the ZDRB would have. That pretty much sums up the staff report. I can go into more detail with the findings if the ZDRB wishes, since I know it's different than what is in the staff report. Would the board feel like it's helpful for me to read through the findings right now?
I personally would actually like to hear a little bit more on the variance we would need to find for the actual two-story building aspect of it.
Okay, so with the attachment that says proposed variance findings for the project, the beginning of the document starts summarizing again what the 5 separate variances are, and then explains how the code requires, what the code requires and how the application is requesting a variance, so it differs from the code. Following that are suggested findings if the board wishes to approve them. So first is the finding that there must be exceptional or extraordinary circumstances applying to the property involved or to the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to other property or uses in the same class of district. This is located in the single-family residential zoning district. And what is stated here is that the 24-foot easement between the subject parcel and 6816 Yount Street creates a circumstance unique to the properties. The easement encroaches 5 feet into the subject parcel, increasing the setback requirement from 5 feet from the property line to 5 feet from the easement line. The purpose of the easement ultimately is to grant sufficient space for automobile access. Furthermore, the size of the parcel, about 4,000 square feet, and the configuration, it being wider than it is deep, of the parcel and the easement, create a unique property with a limited building envelope to develop a single-family house. Furthermore, there are only 4 single-family residential lots from which to measure the second-story limitation, and all 3 of the existing parcels already contain 2-story homes. The uniquely small parcel happens to be located on a unique block on one of the town's only arterial roads. The only arterial road meaning it's a major road for commuters, pretty much. Yountville Crossroads by nature acts differently than a local road like Mulberry or Larkspur. And as such, the houses located on that road have typically a different feel to them than the traditional other single-family residential houses in Yountville. The second finding relates that due to the same extraordinary circumstances not created or attributable to the applicant or the owner of the property, that the literal enforcement of the municipal code would result in practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship. And as stated, because of the easement, the required setback for the development is now greater than it ordinarily would be, and the building envelope is further reduced. The purpose of the easement is to allow sufficient circulation space for vehicular access, which is satisfied by the easement, and the purpose is fulfilled without requiring additional building setback. In addition, because the variances requested relate to the setback from the driveway and separation between structures rather than for front or rear setbacks, there's still sufficient space from the town right-of-way and neighboring parcels to honor the spirit of the setback standard and reduce massing impacts. And finally, as noted in the original finding A, the parcel is uniquely situated on a unique block. Due to the small size of the parcel, a 1-story house built that would honor FAR and setback requirements would result in a small structure that is inconsistent with those in the single-family residential zoning district. Those were the 2 primary findings. The other 4 relate to it not constituting a grant or special privilege that's inconsistent, and the previous findings claim how unique this parcel would be and would not add or affect any precedent. And the variance is also necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of the right of property. The argument could be made that allowing this variance would allow the applicant to enjoy the property to the same extent as other property owners in the neighborhood and the zoning district, including sufficient space for parking and a reasonably sized yard. The variance also would not materially be detrimental to the public welfare or materially injurious to the property or improvements in the vicinity. And the granting of such variance would still be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of this title and would not adversely affect the general plan. So I hope that kind of helped to
It does, yeah,
review those.
very much so.
Even though I, for most part, was just reading it.
Reading.
It gave everyone
No,
a
it-
chance to read it themselves.
Absolutely.
So with that, I'm here to answer any questions.
Member Denton, you want to start?
Can you clarify the last statement on category B? It says it would result in a small structure inconsistent with those in the single-family residential zoning district. The application before us is a 2,000 square foot approximate home. I know that others within the same vicinity are 1,200, 1,300. So the reference to a small structure inconsistent would be small in what regards?
Right. If you take a look at just the main floor, that would be a 990 square foot. And so the majority of single-family residential homes in Yountville would just be that main floor kind of ranch style. And so that 990 square feet was the number kind of used to while writing that variance.
I would add too, just for clarification, that based on the building envelope, because of the unique configuration where the parcel is so wide rather than deep, the front and rear setbacks reduce that building envelope, so a one-story building is below the permitted FAR for a parcel. And what we see on most parcels in town is that people maximize FAR and they go to that maximum limit, which can't be achieved in a one-story home on this lot.
Anything else? Okay. Member Lass?
Nothing yet. Thanks.
Member Allen?
Good, thank you.
I believe I had. Give me 1 second. So the fire department did sign off on the current setback of where the garage is on the property line.
They, when asked about if there's sufficient access for
Yeah.
fire safety, they said there's sufficient access, and the space between the garage and the main dwelling unit, that proposed 5 feet, when asked if there's an issue, they didn't see an issue. They would just likely result in either a stronger firewall in the garage or sprinklers installation.
And is that something we could put in the conditions of approval, or would that be?
We could,
building?
usually that's covered in the building permit
Okay.
stage, so when engineering documents are submitted, fire code goes through and makes sure everything is built to meet current code.
Great. Yeah, that's everything. Is a member from the applicant here to speak? If you could just state your name in the microphone and.
My name is Kirk Peterson. I'm the architect. Haven't done a project here before. I'm from Oakland, and I have been an occasional visitor here since the mid-20th century, so it's nice to be able to contribute. We did a different design for this house 4 years ago. It was vetted. It was sort of Mediterranean style, and then that was put on the table. Now we're back with this more, I'd say it's somewhat craftsman style house. It's been quite a challenge with this very small footprint. We do enlarge the house by having a basement, but it is a basement. It doesn't have a lot of light, and the parking has been quite a challenge. I think Nathan actually really described it all very well. I think we thought, well, we might as well ask for these variances for the extra square footage because the upstairs is quite small without it. So it's a 60-foot variance. Apparently findings can't be made, but it would be nice. Also, with the second floor, we only found out Monday of this code interpretation. So 4 years of looking at this project, we didn't know there was a problem with the second floor. So we only found that out yesterday. So there's no design solution related to possible changes, at least at the moment, except reducing the house drastically. It's a pretty small house. I think it will be a good contribution to the neighborhood. Most of my work is very historic looking. Almost everything I designed is mistaken for a restored historic building as soon as it's done. So this will probably fall into that category. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Questions of the applicant? Member Allen, would you like to start?
No, I need to think about all the variants you're requesting, because there's quite a few numbers to go through. Considering the unique, like you said, property size, we are granting quite a few variants. I think I want to hear the public comments as well as other members' concerns. Thank you.
Thanks. Member Laz?
The only question I had is, what didn't you find out until yesterday? The second floor
The
being
second
the issue,
floor,
the FAR issue?
Yes.
Oh.
Well, it's not really an FAR issue, it's a.
No, the
height
requirement
of
of
the
less than
floor.
Oh, the 50%
50%
issue.
of
Okay,
two-story
got it.
buildings on a block.
Okay.
Great. Member Dunn?
Yeah, so on the garage, what other, and the house, can you describe kind of how your thought process or evolution of the design came about? Specifically on the garage, I'm interested to see if you explored a carport as a creative solution to fit more in a small space.
A carport instead of the garage we're showing?
Correct.
Well, first of all, I think the client, the occupant, probably a garage is better than a carport. Is there, covered parking is useful. I'm sorry, what was the other part of the question?
So I guess the question is, you're before us with a lot of variants, and I'm looking to know whether alternate solutions were explored before this solution was.
We did many sketches. I mean, I would say that the ordinance is very generous as regards the space required for cars. So it's really, and we're sort of partly stuck with the configuration on the duplex parcel. So they're just with the setbacks. We're not supposed to have a garage in the front. We need a setback variance or a building separation variance for the carport, for any parking structure behind the house. And then we've pulled the garage and the house, as close as we can to the west. And it still all works for parking. I mean, this parking scheme is assuming there are 6 18-foot cars, which is probably not likely.
It's just going to be a very tight garage. Your doors are going to have a hard time opening up within the facility.
Well, I come from a very dense neighborhood, so to me this all seems really expansive, except for the house.
Anything else?
Where the initial proposed garage was, there wouldn't have been an issue with the setback, is that correct?
I guess, what do you mean by initial proposed garage?
It says proposed garage 1. That's what,
Oh, yeah, because that's parking space number 1 of 6.
right. Okay,
There.
so that's not an issue.
Right.
Okay.
Parking space 1 is located in the proposed garage.
Also, as Nathan explained, we have this 5-foot setback, a 20-foot rear setback for the duplex parcel, and a 5-foot setback on both sides. And then the proposed house has 20-foot front and back setbacks. And then, we're observing the western, or the eastern setback adjacent to the neighbor's house, and then pushing the house to the easement line. But we're still preserving, the aisle is basically the same size as a standard parking lot, a shopping center parking lot, or, so there's plenty of room. This is a very strange set of little parcels.
Very good. Any more questions of the board? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any members of the public that would like to make a comment? Okay. If you could just state your name into the microphone.
I would. I'm Chip Borrell and Penny Proto. We are the 1971 Yountville Crossroad neighbors to the east. And so this is a change for us, which is okay. My thoughts on this, though, is this is a very small lot, and it has limitations because it is a small lot, and that the lot was created by the applicant with knowledge of its limitations. and the limitations are created by the design of the lot. Now, certainly, it should be allowed to build out what is permitted. Total agreement with that. This design skillfully uses all the setbacks and height limits. It's uses all of the potential available, but it's also asking for more. And it's not that small a house. It's pretty tall. It's the first floor roof ridge line is almost the same as our house next door. But they're requesting 6 variances by my count. It's a little different than staff. You've got the 4 that are listed on the plans, the 2-story limitation, and if the second story proposal bumps out, that would be a rear lot setback limitation. And to me, there's nothing unique or problematic about the lot. It doesn't have an odd shape. It doesn't have any steep slopes. It doesn't have trees. It doesn't have anything that really limits the utilization of it. So there's nothing to me that really argues toward granting serious easements, variances. And I look through the finding requirements, and through A as exceptional or extraordinary circumstances, I don't see them. B, not created or attributable to the applicant or the owner of the property. They created this lot. That it will not, well then under that, the small structure inconsistent with those in the neighborhood. Our house is a 930 square foot footprint, and it has an upstairs which brings it to 1,200. But this house is bigger than our house. C, that the grant will not give a special privilege, which it seems, you know, if this can have variances to move into setbacks and such, any lot could. That the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a right of the property. I don't know about that. Many of these variances will not be detrimental to public welfare. I agree with that. And the final is that granting the variances will be in harmony with the purpose, the intent of this title and the general plan. And if variances are allowed for this, they should be allowed anyway. That's the way I see it. The 2-story block limitation seems important to me. I look at our block as the south side of the crossroad from the 2-story duplex on the corner, which is a large, massive building. And to the east of us on the corner of Mesa Court is also a large, massive building. So they're 2-story. That's how I see the 2-story massing working in our house, and then there's the space, the application right here. So looked at that way, there are already 2-story, they're already 50%. If you use the ridge height, our house is called 2-story because it's above, it's 21 feet, I think, not 20 feet. So that seems especially covered already. And then the interpretation, the way the code works, it also works out that the 2-story is not available. So I argue strongly that this should not be a 2-story house. I looked at our solar panels and potential shading from this house, and I know there's some rules on that which I did not look up. It appears to be about 20 degrees, the nearest ridge, gable end, about 20 degrees the lower part of the panel, which does not look like a problem. But so in summary, the design elements, the aesthetics on this appear very appropriate. I compliment the architect on that. Looks good. And all that we ask here is that this application follows the rules, like everyone else would do. Thank you.
Thank you. Another member from the comment?
Follow right on his footsteps, just real briefly.
If you could state your
Penny-
name, please.
Penny Proto, right next door, 1971 Yountville Crossroad. And just to let you know that there are smaller homes in that area, and there are happy people living in those smaller homes and enjoying their yards. Ours is one of them, and we have neighbors who also have houses that are far smaller than this house is being recommended. And it's something to consider for the town. If lots are going to be made small, are they always going to be looking for variances to the general plan? Is that always going to be a problem? Is there something to consider with the smaller lots? I think initially the smaller lots were to create smaller homes and to have variation of housing stock. So anyway, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, please come up, state your name.
Pam Reeves, 6887 Jefferson Street. I wanted to follow up on some of the previous comments. The fact that this is a small lot and the fact that the owner was privy to the knowledge of all of the easements before they even split the lot makes me not feel especially like the town should create special circumstances for this applicant for this particular project. I think that yes, it's a narrow lot. I live in Old Town in a very narrow lot that's very wide and not very deep. I have a very small house. It's not much more than their first floor. And I think that it's livable. I've lived there 33 years. And I feel like any kind of exception that you make for this project, it denigrates what our general plan and our planning documents try to achieve. We are trying to achieve this sort of unique character of town where there are lots of varying sizes, houses of varying sizes. This would be a small lot with a regular size house on it. It defeats the purpose of what a small lot is. And I would hope that you would not consider a zero setback for a garage, because there's just been an ordinance passed for second units where this garage could be converted to a second unit on the property line would not be a good thing. So I think there are regulations are there for a reason, and that when we change those regulations on a case-by-case basis, you might as well not have a regulation. So those are my comments. I like the design. If it could be shrunk, that would be great. Also, I think that since it's 5 feet from Chip and Penny's house, that the two-story section, if there were granted to be a two-story, it should be to the west, not to the east side of the structure. But I'm not saying that it should be two-story. It should be one-story because of the massing.
Great, thank you. Any other public comments? Yes, please.
Just a couple of comments. When the lot was subdivided, the city decided how big the small lot would be, so based on the existing duplex. So Dolores would have liked it to be bigger, but that wasn't, am I correct? That wasn't really an option. Another thing about the design, we put the living space, the kitchen living spaces on the west side, where if there's a noise, it wouldn't be bothering the next door neighbors, and people wouldn't be looking into. We put the sort of quiet end of the house next to the next door neighbors, and so that's why the second story is where it is. I mean, the second story is only 200, without a variance, it's 214 square feet, so it's not very big. Well, that's and then again, I said that the parking, the standards are very generous. And I would also, I don't know if it was in your package, the historic condition of this property was, there was the duplex, there was another house, there was a big water tower, and the existing garage were all on the lot until sometime around when I was born. I don't know when those structures, the two of them disappeared, but that's a little bit of the history and a little bit of my thought process.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, I will close public comment and open up to board discussion. My thought would be we take this variance and design element one by one and go through the list and see where and if we decide any variances should be made. And we can start with the design portion. Let's find this here. Member Denton, do you want to start off with the design piece of everything?
I feel like starting with a macro perspective first. I'm afraid I actually agree quite a bit with a lot of the public comments that have been expressed. I feel like, first of all, the design of the structure, there's absolutely no criticism. It's a very lovely house as far as choice of materials and style. But I'm really struggling with all variances. Maybe the only one that I can separate or distinguish differently than the rest would be the house sitting on the easement. I feel like that's kind of an internal issue that's not affecting anyone, but all the rest of the variances I'm at the moment not in support of.
We'll come back in a second and talk through possible solutions and things like that. Member Laws?
I agree overall.
Okay, Member Allen?
I hear all the concerns, particularly for the neighbor with the two-story house. When in the afternoon, when the sun comes down, it will shade their house and a garden, whatever they have in that narrow setback. That would be a concern if I was a neighbor. And I understand their concern about setting precedents of variance, considering this lot size and other people we have to live with. I'm having problem approving a lot of variance.
A few questions. Actually, Nathan, maybe you could help. Sandra, I thought you mentioned something about a minimum FAR for single-family dwellings.
No, I was mentioning the maximum FAR permitted for single-family dwellings in the single-family residential zoning district, and that's 30% of the lot coverage.
Okay. All right, so again, agree with the design element, the variances. It seems like we'll start with the garage. Potential solutions that we want to talk through, or what that could look like.
Yes, agreed. So I think irregardless of whether it's a garage or carport, there is a design solution to be within compliance. The side, or actually the rear yard setback, is fine. Just as a suggestion, the only reason for throwing out a carport idea is because you could maintain the 6 foot minimum setback between the house and a carport. If you want to keep the garage, then altering 12 inches of the residence seems appropriate, even though that would affect the floor area ratio. And even though, my opinion is, even though it's been demonstrated effectively that the maneuvering of cars in and out is effective, the 0 lot line just doesn't seem justified.
Any other comments to add? Member Laws or Member Allen?
I agree with Denton.
Great. Does anyone have any support or justification for granting any of the variances asked for?
The two-story variance, I personally don't think that that's I think the town of Yountville is built out at this point, and it's something to look at on a broader scale. But in this forum, I don't see us finding the justification for the two-story, and it's unfortunate that the applicant didn't have that evaluation of the block up front. That's an oddity, I think, of Yountville that is a little quirky, but it hasn't played out in the past decades and stuff because we weren't at that threshold. But I think we're going to continue to receive a number of applications coming forward because we're built out at this point.
I definitely agree with that comment. I think that's more of a discussion, if I'm correct, for the general plan, and if that's something that wants to be adjusted about the 50% on the block.
That's a bigger conversation.
That we're not going to
No.
to get into, no. But yeah, to your point, we're going to see this type of application pretty frequently, and if we find variance now, it's going to be difficult. Would anyone like to make a motion on the application?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that let's see.
One thing the board could do, of course you have plenty of options available to you. If you want to make a motion to deny, that's perfectly within your realm to do so. You also can leave the option to the applicant to make revisions to the design and then resubmit if you'd like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that
okay.
might be a good idea.
Yes.
Second.
So that wouldn't even need a motion necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
If the member of the applicant would like to revisit this and come back, especially with the knowledge now of the 50% secondary or two-story units on the block, that would be great.
Do we want to provide consensus? I mean, I'd like to hear other board members. Is there any of the variances that my other fellow members would support?
I think the property that you purchase is small, and within the confines of the property, there are limitations that, as the community members have said, and as part of the way variances are given, it wouldn't make sense to provide a variance because of the fact that there is no extraordinary or unique circumstance specific to this, other than the fact that it is a small piece of property, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Going through the literally 1 through 5 on this house setback from the easement, I'm okay with that, as we discussed briefly. The garage setback from the property line, I would prefer this be moved back to the proper distance. Garage separation from the house, I believe if that was moved, would that address that issue?
If it is moved to honor the setbacks in the code, then yeah.
Okay. Floor area ratio, not having it as a secondary or a second floor home would satisfy that, and the two-story building would be eliminated as well. So that would be my personal feedback. If any other members have anything to add?
I'm of the same opinion.
I think that probably sums up how I feel.
Great. Thank you.
So officially a non-action.
Yeah, officially a non-action.
Okay.
Yes.
With no action, it would serve as a continuance, and if there would be another hearing, it would also be another noticed public hearing similar to this one.
Great. Thank you, everyone from the public and the applicant for coming in and talking tonight. And we will wait for Chair Cook.
Okay, then we will move on to the next project, 1177, 6525 Washington Street, design review and master plan sign amendment for Platform 8.
Good evening. Tonight you have before you design review and sign permit for the tenant improvements for the old Pacific Blue space, and that's to brand the property as Platform 8, a new restaurant. And I will walk you through the different elevations and the proposed changes, and as we approach issues on each of those elevations, I'll call them out for discussion at that time. So in this overhead, you see each of the 4 existing elevations. Next slide. And these are the proposed modifications to each elevation. I'll start with the top left, and that is the front elevation facing east. And the 2 biggest changes that we see are the dramatic changes to the existing bar space that will be renovated into an ice cream shop or ice cream lab, and then the modifications to the front deck. And the front deck is a large front deck that's accessed by 2 sets of stairs to the primary historic building and then the addition to the right. And the applicant proposes to open this up to improve the ADA access as well as views of the building. So starting on the left-hand side or the south elevation, the applicant proposes a ramp that would provide access to that second set of doors on the historic building, and then which would ramp down to provide access to the ice cream shop. The ice cream shop is accessed directly through a set of stairs from Washington Street, and as we wrap around the building, you'll see that there is a set of waterfall stairs that provides a new approach to the lawn area on the north side of the building. And the applicant proposes to change the railing from the heavy wood cross beams to a lighter aeronautical wire, again in keeping with trying to open up views of the building. On the ice cream shop element of the building, we see large new picture windows and a frameless glass door intended to really open the building up and allow views into the space. And this portion of the building would be re-roofed with a standing seam metal roof. Moving on to the north elevation, which is on the upper right-hand side of this slide, we see, again, new windows and new doors to the ice cream shop for a whole new access point on this elevation, and an ice cream pickup window. Moving further west, we see the elevation, which appears very flat in this drawing, but it does have indentation in plane where the applicant proposes to remove 2 non-ADA compliant restrooms and to build a grind room that is visible from the deck side of the property. And what this does is enclose space that already exists underneath the roof line and serves to increase FAR by 64 square feet. And when viewed in terms of the parcel as a whole, it's a 6.5 acre parcel. This is 0.02%. So it's really considered de minimis. It's under an existing roof line, and we find that it's in substantial compliance with the town's FAR standards. So now moving on to the rear elevation, this is where we see another of the, let's go over to the left. The other big major change for this property is the steel and glass roof structure that would allow the deck to be used year-round in our environment. And what you see here is a modified design that was not in your packets, but what this does is respond to architect Inman's concerns in the historic report that the proposed structure was too large. Originally, it had extended well beyond that south building face, and it was very visible from the Y intersection. And what it did was it obscured views of the marketplace or the Pacific Blues building, and it changed the context of that courtyard, which was important in terms of the placement of these historic structures on the property. She had recommended that the roof line be lowered, and the applicant has lowered it, that it be pulled back from the building corner to maintain the visibility of that other building. And she had recommended that it be a flat roof, but the applicant is seeking to use the hip roof that's shown here, indicating it's necessary as a part of the design. So while we find they have been very responsive to the concerns of the architect, and that as presented, it will satisfy the Secretary of Interior standards. I will note that the applicant would prefer to have a large cover over the back patio, certainly in terms of use. Had they elected to pursue that route, an environmental impact report would have needed to have been prepared in order to analyze alternatives, and the applicant would have lost time. So with the desire to move this project forward, they've heeded the recommendations of the consultant and hopes that the project moves forward tonight. Also on this elevation is an outdoor fireplace. Again, you see the cable railing, and you see a direct set of stairs that provides access to the back door, in keeping with trying to improve access and usability of this structure. Moving on to the south elevation now, the applicant proposes another set of those waterfall stairs for that south door, which does not currently provide real access to the building, and this would be a primary entrance to the restaurant. You can also see beyond on the left side, behind at the deck area, the new large viewing window into the grind room, and that is the area that was built out in the area of the current ADA restroom. So the two big issues are the FAR, which we determine are de minimis, and the impacts to a historic structure, which we feel are addressed with this revised design before you. The architect review of the historic study found that all other improvements were in keeping with the Secretary of Interior standards. And that includes that north building elevation where there's such dramatic changes to the ice cream shop with those windows and roof line, etc. So that's one part of the application before you tonight. The other, let's move on. Yeah, I wanted to just share these, this inspiration board as to design elements, and the applicant may wish to speak more as to how these will play into the design. And this is an illustration showing that northwest building corner, and how with the removal of that large deck and the use of those large windows, everything is really opened up. So I did want to go back to that south elevation because it shows a proposed relocation of one of the proposed signs. The sign package is before you tonight, and the applicant's individual signs are outlined in an attachment to the staff report. It's a master sign plan property, and the number and location of signs are generally in keeping with those standards. Master sign plan properties may have one wall sign, and the one you see here on the south elevation satisfies that standard. The applicant is proposing window signs for the east and north elevations of the ice cream shop at the storefront entries to serve as giving notice. And it's interesting that the applicant was also proposing signs for the nitrogen dioxide tank that's on the elevation. The ice cream will be prepared in that manner. And while staff could support the N2 designation, we feel that the additional signage for Platform 8 goes beyond the number of signs that's permitted. So we suggest removal of that sign. The only other sign is the proposed freestanding sign, and the applicant had originally proposed replacing the existing the marketplace sign in the right-of-way with this sign, and staff couldn't support that because that existing sign serves the important purpose of giving directional notification to drivers of the rear parking lot and the site as a whole. And we were also concerned with the height of the sign where it was so adjacent and close to the sidewalk, given the lower edge of the sign. In response, the applicants raised the height of the sign to have the 7-foot clearance. They've moved it to the planter area near the window on the right-hand side of the historic structure. And while it is increased in height, it it's a sign that harkens back to the historic nature of the property. And the only other issue would be that it is a freestanding sign that doesn't designate all of the businesses or the site, and this is a master sign plan property. However, exceptions could be made to that requirement based on the amount of signage provided and the fact that it's been divvied up between all signs without exceeding that maximum amount. So those are the issues before you tonight. The applicant is seeking feedback and a recommendation that we can take to council as they will be the decision-making body on this application.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have questions of staff? Mikhail?
I think you had mentioned the removal of 2 ADA restrooms.
Yes.
Non-compliant.
Non-compliant.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Which leaves 2 ADA restrooms attached to this building and others on the site as a whole. And an ADA evaluation determined that there are sufficient number of restrooms.
Great. That's all.
Okay, Barbara?
So the additional square footage is very minimal to take any effect of any discussion for significant effects, or
I think there are 2 elements worth noting. One is that it's a 0.02% increase in FAR, which doesn't increase the FAR above the maximum allowed. And that 2, it's already in an area that is covered in an area of existing restrooms and a breezeway. So the impacts to massing are not increased significantly.
Can you, I'm sure the applicant can tell, which is the main entrance to the building, to Platform 8?
I understand that the main entrance will be this south side entry, very
That
close
side.
to where the current entry is now, except it's to the deck, and this is directly to the building.
But, so that side? And they're changing it from the drawings that were proposed here? Because the drawing proposed that we have shows a railing all the way across in front of it, that door.
No, it's not the same sign.
It's not, I thought it was the same one.
The drawings you have
Give it
show
different
look like
drawing.
that. So it's up on the screen now for
sorry,
the east
sorry,
elevation.
sorry.
My north
I'm looking at
elevation.
as-built. Yeah, sorry. Okay, there we go.
No.
So that's the main entrance. Wow. I wouldn't catch that.
Well, that's the main building sign. That's the wall sign. That's
Mhm.
opening up that entrance
Yeah,
so
see,
that it's
that's
actually
different.
accessible straight from the sidewalk.
No, what we have doesn't show stairs there. It shows a railing all the way across. Okay, so that looks more like an entrance than what we have.
Does your drawing look like this?
No. Our drawing of that side
East
has a
elevation,
railing
no.
across in front of that door.
No, it
No.
does?
Yeah?
south elevation.
Then it's a
Oh, but
change
that's-
before you that wasn't depicted in the drawings, but we see no issue with it.
Why am I the only one not getting this?
I don't know if I mentioned the applicants are here and they'll be able to represent their
Okay.
project also.
Okay. And the tank, are we addressing the location of the tank? The
You could address
legality
it
of
in
it
terms of
visually?
design review,
Okay.
because it is a tank visible from the exterior of the building. But in terms of health and safety, we think those are identified by fire department review and the conditions as proposed.
Okay. Okay.
It looks like on the plans that were submitted, the south elevation, it may actually be, what's written here as the south elevation is actually the west elevation. There was a correction given on, the initial round had south, there was confusion whether south should be
Yeah,
south facing
I just
or
quit
from the
looking at
south
those
looking north.
because it
so.
didn't seem right, but still, that isn't what we're showing it there. Okay.
Yeah, so Kim, I can confirm that the drawings that you have show that that's access from the deck. They've since changed that proposal. It
So
would
there's
be
stairs.
the waterfall stairs up to
Okay.
the entry, which is viewed as a positive change by staff, creating direct access.
Yeah, it
So
looks more like an
it's-
entrance.
This is a staircase right here.
Yeah. Okay, do you have questions of staff? Jared?
Staff.
Okay. So the applicant here tonight, would they like to come up and speak?
David O'Malley from Group Occhiarello. So I can answer any questions, or so how would we want to?
If you have anything to add to what
The
staff...
intent of this is a modern burger house with the ice cream lab attached to it. We have been try to be as respectful as possible with the historic brick building, and in fact, what we are considering the east elevation, which is Washington Street. Our ADA ramp has tried to bring that down so you can see the verticalness of the building that's been lost with the hedges and the existing deck that they have currently. And we've also, the wooden structure that is to the north, this is the one that we thought had the most potential to add something completely different and something unique to Yountville. And by having the ice cream lab there to show the whole show of it, and it also allows us to use that ADA ramp to ramp up to the front door, which is not the main entrance, obviously, as we've talked about. It's the south entrance, and then ramp back down again to the ice cream lab. When in the past, to get to the bar, currently you have to go in the back entrance and come all the way around through the restaurant to get to that. We've tried to do the waterfall stairs on both the southeast corner and the northeast corner to allow greater access. And we are talking to property ownership to make that lawn a more communal lawn where people can take their ice creams out and enjoy them in that grass area. The landlord is going to try to improve that area when we go into construction, if and when we go into construction. The grind room that we've talked about so far is Chef Chiarello, who's behind me, and can speak to it as well. We want to show people what it takes. We want to grind the meat on an hourly basis and make that part of the show, and that it's very fresh. So we have show going on there, and we also have the show of the liquid nitrogen ice cream being made right in front of you. So that's why the wooden structure, trying to open it up a little bit more with the glass doors and having a separate entrance off to the north elevation as well.
Okay, does anybody have any questions of the applicant? Mikhail?
Nope, none of the applicant.
Okay, Barbara?
Not right now, thank you.
My question would be, you've seen the conditions of approval. Do you have any objections to any of the conditions of approval? They've sort of been already, you've already kind of revised them a little bit. You've changed the rough line.
The town has been, brought those forward to me last Friday, and we acted immediately. We believe the glass and steel structure on the back deck is important as a counterpoint to the historic brick building, but we understood the sight line concern, so we brought it back. We lost 2 bays of that, so we can have that sight line from Washington Street to the vintage 1870 marketplace. We did diminish the apex of that structure from 13.4 down to 11.6 and reduce the columns from 9 feet to 8 feet. So we're trying to keep in the integrity of the entire structure.
Let's see, and you moved the arrival departure sign.
We did.
Signed copy from the liquid nitrogen tanks?
We took that off as
okay.
well. It's
Okay.
if you saw the elevation, it shows you it's just the LN2.
Oh, okay, so just the call out, okay. Clock tower sign, is that still?
It's proposed on the south elevation, shown here next to the window on the right side of the building.
So we moved it from where we had initially proposed it to the west side of the sidewalk onto the area where there's currently some landscaping, and we raised the blade signs so they were the appropriate height, so they wouldn't impact anyone's.
And the proposed train arrival departure sign in the
We
town
took
map?
that away.
Okay. So you've already addressed
We've addressed
kind of
all
the
those
special
issues.
conditions. Okay.
The
Okay, thank you for being so good to work with. Karen, do you have any questions of the applicant?
So just so I'm clear with this, the outdoor space, it will have, it says here, custom transparency canopy, that'll be year-round? Is that what the?
It will be glass and steel, but it won't have any sides to it. So it's unconditioned space. There'll be some vent windows probably up the top just to let the heat escape. But
So it's kind of like it is now, just partially covered deck.
Just partially covered.
Instead of fully covering the deck.
Right.
Okay.
It was a big reduction from we had gone almost all the way to the entrance to the south
Right,
parking lot
right.
with that structure. We pulled it back 2 full bays.
Any other questions? Jared?
I feel like I should have full disclosure. I've worked on this project with Jen Fletcher and previous owners and stuff before 2007. One of the questions that I first have is when you ran the plumbing calculations for the restaurant and the ice cream lab, it doesn't seem like one single water closet for men and women is sufficient. Is there any auxiliary?
On the property itself, well, we have the 2 ADA bathrooms that are attached.
Correct.
And then we have the one that's right adjacent to the north parking lot, right by as you enter towards Bottega. There's a men's and women's there. And if you went through the V Marketplace, there is other restrooms there.
So when you run the calculations for the overall project, are you utilizing some of those to suffice for the restaurant, or is it a standalone with just the two stalls for this structure?
That wasn't a concern that was brought up to us at any point in time.
I think with the use of the deck, when you start calculating all of the occupants and stuff, that there is a need to have additional restrooms. So that would be just something to check. The couple of other questions. One is for staff. So I recall going through Bouchon Bakery, there was quite a concern of the front entry not facing the street. So I think there's a provision that the door has to face onto Washington Street as the primary access.
It doesn't need to be primary access, but they have to maintain accessibility in both locations. The idea is that they don't close that off as a side, close it off to the street and make it a side elevation. The fact that it may not be the primary entry, but as an entry is fine and consistent.
So as long as there's one access from the street, okay. It's also proposed in here to alter the doors. Based off of the photos and stuff, it didn't appear to have the full light. It looked like there was a French door with a transom above was the historical context, but it's proposed to have full height doors.
On the front elevation, the east elevation on Washington Street?
Both that elevation as well as this elevation that we're looking at. It appears that there's a proposed change.
Well, part of it was, as you see, the one closest to the southeast corner of the building, if you currently see the way it is now, it's probably shortened about at least 1 to 2 panes because of the way the deck comes in. We're trying to bring back some of that vertical height to that building that was lost over the years. At one point in time in 1980s, that was at grade, and so everything was at grade, so you saw the full height of the building, and currently you do not.
I'm referring to if you look at the light fixtures that are attached to the structure, if you were to take a horizontal line from that point, there's a existing transom window above there, and so it appears that there's a change in the historical nature. So if you look at the existing photos that were submitted.
I could address that.
Yeah.
The historic architect Enman reviewed the change in the windows and doors and found that they were consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards. The doors are, for the most part, I think, new additions rather than historic features.
So do we have photo evidence of, or reference or context of what they used to? look like?
Have her report, and it references the history of the project. I'd have to refresh my memory by reading it, but those issues are addressed in her report.
All right. Lastly, or two other quick points. One, I think that closing off the breezeway, at least from the north elevation, loses some of the context of the historic structure. In other words, I'm currently able to at least look down that open breezeway and see the edge of the brick building. So not opposed to the square footage, FAR and all of those, but if there was a way to incorporate some element that you could see through that and still maintain the historic characteristic. I know that the roof already covers it, but from my standpoint, the north elevation looks very dense, and the breezeway is at least some homage that I can see some transparency through that north elevation.
The current breezeway that you're describing, that's like 2 feet wide?
It's more than 2 feet because you can walk through it, so.
I mean, it goes into the
restrooms.
The restrooms in the back
Currently.
of the house.
Yeah.
I don't think you can see the historic brick structure if you were on the north side looking through that.
I think you can, based off of the view angle in perspective. I know that there's currently a service counter and stuff, but you can see above that service counter, I believe. Last point was with the gable roof of the old train depot. The exterior structure seems like it would be more appropriate with a gable roof as opposed to a hip roof, but it's just a side comment.
No, I agree with that. That's a good call. Okay, anybody else have any other questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you. Unless you have any other comments. Did you want to come up and speak? Okay, come on up. Yes, that's a good question. Yeah, I'll have to ask.
Michael Chiarella, I'm the proprietor. We spent an extraordinary amount of time, an inordinate amount of time, since 1987 actually, understanding the needs of the Napa Valley. What's the best it could possibly be to serve the guests that aren't served. We recently took over 5,000 feet that could have been done very differently where Ultimo is, and develop something that's much needed for affordable dining, for people during the day, for families to be able to enjoy. When I optioned this space many years ago, I had the opportunity to put a much higher revenue restaurant there, which I already own the concept of. And I came for the blessing of the city, and I asked in their heart of hearts, what's the city need most of all? I raised 4 children in this valley. What does it need most of all? I could have and had the right to, and continue to have the right to, put anything in there that I want to fit inside the guidelines of the city and what it's currently been. I chose to give up $2 million a year worth of revenue, at least, to develop something in keeping with the nature of what the city needs. An affordable bite to eat is a high entertainment value that stands for the quality of the Napa Valley that I've lived for 200,000 hours of my work life. We spent $250,000 before we came in front of you to make sure that we can do that. Every nook and cranny, the breezeway included, I can assure you, is not a view of the historic building. Every bit and piece. When we look at the coverage, which has already been improved, by the way, in the patio, in the previous design, it was not flat, that council and the planning departments approved. Is in keeping with that, is actually smaller. The improvements done from a dollar and cent standpoint to the return are minimal. The concern was simply, can we create a place that all families can come to enjoy something they can eat that's affordable, that has a high entertainment value, to create a center, help to create a center for gathering in Yountville, which is missing. The historic nature of what a platform would have been from Santa Barbara North in that time, if you'd care to take a look, Jared, is in keeping with that, as it would never have been a flat structure. It would have been near the gable roof In comparison, there's not a historical component to that. We're looking simply to do something extraordinary. It's fun and approachable and affordable. All along the way, the building is deeply important to me. To have a train station without a clock for that period, you can take the clock away. I don't say I don't care, I care. Because it's in keeping with the historic nature of what all of our jobs are here to do. But I ask that we don't look at this with a sharpened tooth, but an open heart. So what does Yountville need? What can it really be? Are we doing the right thing every step of the way? My partner David, who's up here before, has spent 50 hours a week for weeks on end, making sure that we can do that with a very, very good support and help of staff. From the very moment that we decided what we wanted to do here, we came and talked to staff about what serves us all best. So I hope in keeping with our decisions and questions, we can also keep in mind what's in our hearts and what we developed to do, and what we continue to hope to do, and to show everybody to continue to support the community at large. I'm happy to answer any questions along the way. I'm also happy to defend what the Yountville needs at the same time.
Okay, Al, you have any questions for the applicant?
Nope.
Barbara?
I just had a quick question. What's the capacity of the restaurant? Number of seats?
100. 100, and we're not, it's not a real expansion of a footprint. I look to solve problems. If we made the front door on Washington Street, it would have created a problem. If I do my job right, there'd be a line sitting out the front door blocking the public right-of-way on there. The smartest place to put it was right on Washington Street. I decided for half of the visual traffic to be able to see what we're doing and to be able to deal with it through the largest door that we have, and to create the best solution we can by having 2 traffic patterns for somebody that wanted to enjoy the ice cream component of what we're doing, not to have to kind of commingle and to separate them to 2 parts of the building. I'm very proud of what my team's done and what we've thought of, so can I answer anything else at all?
Jared, no questions? No questions, thank you.
Appreciate your tolerance, thanks.
Okay, so I guess our first objection is to discuss the design. Right? Public comment. Yes, thank you, Pam. Do we have any members of the public that would like to come in up and comment? Pam, come on up.
Pam Reeves, 6887 Jefferson Street. I don't have any problem with the uses of this, and I expect that it will be a wonderful place to be. But I do have some issues and reservations about the appearance of the building. The south and the inward, the east elevations seem fine, and the revised glass and metal structure seem more reasonable, but I think both the north and the west elevations along Washington Street and where the restrooms are, I think that the design doesn't do any favors to the building. I've been in this town for over 35 years, and my husband had a shop in that building, actually the little part that's going to be ripped off. I feel nostalgic about that, but I'm okay with things changing. But I think that the glass and steel aspect and the hip roof versus a gable roof don't match the ambiance of the town, and the fact that there's going to be landscaping removed and there's not going to be separation between the street and this, whatever it is, ramp that's going to be out in front. That doesn't make the town feel friendly, and I think separation of pedestrian versus cars is really necessary, and plants do a really good job of making that separation. At least in the renderings, I don't see any room for landscaping. or there wasn't any added there. So I think it's important. That looks pretty awful, actually. And the metal roof is great, but that whole slab of building that will be on the north side, it's not enhancing that whole area. And if they want to put a ramp, they should put it on the north side, not on the west side, which is Washington Street. I think a different treatment for that elevation is required for the town to have a cohesive feeling and for there to be green space accessible to the public walking by. Those are my main objections. And I think that the idea of opening up the building in order to reveal a lower, whatever, access, lower grade level, I don't think it's necessary. I don't think that enhances the look of the building. And, well, I would never have a tank like that outside anywhere. I've been to a lot of ice cream stores that have that kind of individual served using all of that gas, and it's indoors. It's not outside. And I don't think it's a requirement. It's not a safety thing. It's covered and it's not out in the open. And I think that that's an unfortunate look for the front of the vintage property. So I would say, you know, the other elevations are fine, but the most obvious ones are kind of an eyesore. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other members of the public that want to comment? Okay, then we will close the public comment and go. The planting at the park strip will still be there, right?
Right, and I will clarify that there's no removal of landscaping proposed
Right.
under this application. It's not shown in this rendering,
Right.
but that is not a rendering to show landscaping. And that we would expect the applicant to come back with revisions to modernize and update the landscaping. It's sort of old and woody and overgrown right now, but they don't anticipate yanking it all out and not replacing it.
Okay, thank you.
And then the applicant may want to comment on the tank if you want to hear more from them and why it was a deliberate decision to place it outside in terms of its aesthetic value. If you're interested.
Let's see how our discussion goes. Mikhail, you have some comments on the project design?
While we're on the topic of the tank, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think the tank being outside kind of plays to the aesthetic of what is actually happening inside. I think it's a very modern, cool aspect of the shop that differentiates it from other ice cream parlors is the fact that it's done with liquid nitrogen. And I believe the way they have it kind of labeled with the LN on there, if that's a design that they intend to keep, I think really makes it an attraction to come in versus just another ice cream shop that you don't really know what's going on inside. So from my viewpoint, I personally like that added aesthetic, as long as obviously everything safety-wise is up to code and there's no issue with that. In terms of the actual design of the building, I don't have any problems with it. I like it. I think it's an improvement. I think that side area to the north, that kind of added structure, kind of helps to highlight the historical brick part of the building. So I do not have a problem with that. My one question, actually, Sandra, you had mentioned one of the signs being removed or replaced for the railway sign, I believe, maybe?
They had originally proposed removing the monument sign for V Marketplace. They have abandoned that request, and the proposal now to bring the railroad crossing arm sign closer to the building to tie it into the whole historic structure.
And does staff have any issues or concerns with that, or?
Well, I would say a strict interpretation of the sign ordinance is that this is a separate sign, but I think it holds value as more than just a sign, and in that it speaks to the clock, it designates Yountville Napa Valley, so it's really more than a sign, which makes it hard to evaluate in terms of a very strict sign ordinance that might not allow as much creativity. So there is an option to approve a freestanding sign of this nature with exceptions. I haven't made them in the staff report, but I was hoping to have a discussion amongst the members as to your thoughts on it.
In terms of the railway sign, I honestly had no idea the historic nature of this building until this piece came up. And the name was completely baffling to me until that piece kind of tied it all in. So I do think that can play another kind of storytelling element. Just from if I'm living in Yountville and I'm talking to friends and saying, you know, this is why this is named like that, that's why that sign's there. So I do think there is some added value to that. That's everything I have.
Good. Barbara?
I do not have any objection to the tank to be outside. I think that's part of the uniqueness of this ice cream parlor they're trying to create. And I certainly agree with the burger and ice cream is needed for this town. In the summer, a lot of people walk around with children. Family value for this, what they're serving is something we don't have. And as far as the addition on the north, I do not see that as an eyesore. It's significantly different from the historical building, but we see that more and more in much bigger projects like museums or something added to a historic building outside in the big cities. It seems to be one of those things, the contrast brings out the significance of what they're trying to do. Ice cream, different from burger. Burger is quite traditional, and we're having something that's different from traditional ice cream parlor. And it doesn't describe me as being an eyesore or something needs to be changed to accommodate for the rest of the town. And I believe we have a unique opportunity to have something diversified from the traditional Italian, French restaurant we have. It would be a welcome addition to me for this town. And the details I'm not too fussed about. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree that I like most of the changes. I think it cleans up the overall look of the property from it had sort of looked like it was sort of modeled together. It gives it a cohesive design. I like the addition and design of the ice cream lab and that north end of the building. I do not like the tank. To me, placing the tank there, coloring it bright white, makes it look like the backside of the building. And to me, that's not any kind of advantage. I like the idea of having the ice cream lab close to the lawn and incorporating that whole idea of sitting outside is really a lovely thought. To me, it's like putting a trash can or a dumpster on the backside of that building. Other than that, my only other comment is I agree with Jared's note about the outdoor overhead structure being a gable end instead of a hip makes a lot more sense to me visually. Otherwise, I like all the changes and I like the idea. Karen?
I think it's a great concept. I'm happy that even though we're losing Pacific Blues, we're gaining something in the same vein. It's not, you know, changing into something that again is going to be a high-ticket restaurant or super high-ticket restaurant. The tank, is that the only place it can go? Is that the issue? Was it a space issue or was it more of an intentionally done issue, I guess? It was more intentionally placed.
Come on up.
So everyone watching at home can hear you.
It was intentional to call out the liquid nitrogen and for a safety issue. If you put that, the only other place to put that tank would be in the basement. And putting a liquid nitrogen tank in the basement, if there was an issue,
A big issue.
it's a big issue because that basement, as you might all know, is problematic as it is. And there is no basement underneath. The only basement is under the historic brick structure, not underneath that addition. There's only a crawl space under that addition. So, but it was, we're not tied to the white, we're,
Yeah, there's a color
it's-
issue.
you know, we're open to things, but we thought it was important to bring out the liquid nitrogen, saying this is what it's made of. It is quite a departure from what you're normally seeing, and it's part of the modern, once again, it's the compare and contrast with the historic structure.
Okay. Thanks. I think it's a color thing, what it is. I don't think it's an issue that I like the contrast of the brick with the more modern touch to it. I think it's fine. I mean, it's in line with a lot of newer buildings here in town anyway. I think it might be a color issue, actually.
With the tank
Yeah.
that you don't like?
Yeah. And I see your point about it almost looking like it's, it kind of detracts from what the focus really should be, which is the ice cream place. I think that's what it is.
Which stands out with the glass doors, and it will say Ice Cream Lab, which is a cool name.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Jared?
So I definitely like the ice cream lab as far as the contemporary moves with the steel doors. The standing seam metal roof is a wonderful contrast. Never have really liked the wood shingles. Just looks dated and old. As far as the ever popular tank, I think like a gunmetal gray would be a fantastic color choice, but full support of it being exposed as long as it's not white. Just go after it, right? Embrace it. I'm not, I think the street frontage and stuff, I can get past that there's still going to be landscaping, that we're taking out the deck and replacing the ADA walkway there. But, and the railing choice is nice because you can see the brick, so all of those are working. It's just the renderings aren't doing us a selling point there. So, sure.
The renderings,
I'll just change to this slide then.
yeah, the rendering, thank you, Nathan. The renderings are still preliminary, that we were waiting to get to finalize the plans. And as we know, that things just changed on Friday, so we're going to have new renderings that will be presented before the town council. And we have no problem moving the color to if you have seen some Otimo, we have a color called soot, which is a very dark charcoal gray. We have no problem doing that, but we still want to call out the LN2 just so people are aware of what that is.
I could live with that. Okay.
Does that answer some of the?
I think so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So lastly, I absolutely love the sign, the clock. I think that's a fun move. Fully embrace that. I don't know the impacts on the sign regulations, but I think it's just a cool element you should absolutely embrace. So the fireplace in the back, we've had I know it's been explored many times, and it's crying for that element to gather around in the evenings. I mean, the whole issue in the past has been nobody wants to hang out there in the months of November, December, and January. So you gotta, in order for this to even remotely function, right, from an operations, you gotta embrace outside. So anything that you can do to encourage activity out there, and it just looks better to have more people, the visual connection as well. So I like even though I mentioned the comments and stuff on Washington Street, I mean, it's natural to have the entrance on the south. So that was just a comment directed at the staff, but I think it's a positive move that I could see myself walking in from the south, and that's, as you mentioned, the separation between the ice cream lab and that, the flow, not commingling and stuff, absolutely makes sense. So overall support, just had the comments about the gable end, and if there could be a visual connection somehow from the north.
Does that? Sure, come on back up.
We would definitely can revisit the gable. What was the architect that was hired by the town actually wanted a flat roof, which we did not want. So we had reduced it from 13 feet 4 inches at the apex down to 11.6. So we can revisit the idea of the shape of that
I like
roof
that,
out there.
yeah.
So
Okay.
I just wanted to add, but the architect, the Inman report
Right.
had stated they wanted a flat roof, which did not work for us.
And I could understand her comment, but when you cut it back, it made a big difference, so. Does that give you enough comments? And is there anything else you'd like us to discuss?
Well, I'd like a formal motion and a vote
Okay,
on, more generally, the design review and sign permit.
On what to recommend
Which I
to
think
council.
on what I think the recommendation to council will be. Is it a recommendation to approve both those actions? Yes.
okay, I will make a motion that we, are supporting the project as presented with a few suggested revisions of a gable end to the outdoor roof and a dark color choice for the liquid nitrogen tank. And then that we also support the, what are they calling that sign?
Clock sign.
The clock sign.
Good.
There a second?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Any staff or board report?
Just want to make one quick update regarding the Envision Yountville efforts. This Thursday is the 4th Speaker Series event. It will be held at 6 o'clock at the Community Center, and the topic will be the town's relationship with the County Ag Preserve, to know what is the Ag Preserve, what impacts, if any, does it have on incorporated communities in the valley like Yountville, and what can we anticipate that relationship being in the past, present, and future. So I know many of you have come to these speaker series meetings before. Strongly encourage you to continue to attend. And then on May 18th will be the final meeting, the final speaker series event, where we'll have nationally renowned speaker, Peter Kageyama, who will come and talk about just the love of community and the love of public service, which should be a great event. And members of town staff, volunteers, boards, commission members, and council are also invited to a special morning edition with the speaker Peter that morning. Each of you got an invitation. Again, please just RSVP, email back to me to confirm whether you'll be able to attend or not. It's that Thursday morning at 9 o'clock, also in the community center. Regarding the recruitment to the community advisory committee for the general plan update as part of Envision Yountville, we already have somewhere between 22 and 24 applicants, which is a lot. It closes on Friday, so if any of you wish to extend that invitation to others for more applications, we are always excited and delighted when we see lots of applications. That shows public interest, and the higher the public interest, the overall better product in the end.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I've only been able to attend one of the Envision meetings, the last one, the Balance. And it was excellent meeting, very well presented. People got to ask questions. It was a great board. I thought it was very well done.
Are you saying that because one of the people in the board is in the room right now?
No, but I thought it was great having her on there. I just think you guys did a really wonderful job. And the proof of the job you've done is the number of people that are choosing to get involved, which is really great. So that's really nice. Thank you for doing that. And I am enjoying that book by Peter Kageyama. I haven't finished it yet. Sorry, I would have brought it back. But I encourage other people to read it. It's very interesting, insightful, different look at how we interact with our cities. I thought that was interesting.
I still have books to loan. I
Oh,
have one
good.
copy of that book available if anyone's interested.
And thank you for the comfortable chairs. I like them.
That was priority number one.
Yes. First thing I noticed. Okay.
Oh, I thought it might be worth noting that the council at their last meeting introduced 2 new ordinances. One was the second dwelling ordinance, and a lot of your feedback was very valuable and incorporated into the ordinance, one of which is that second floor plate height for a second dwelling over a garage. And we'll take the final reading and adoption to them this next week. The other item that may be of interest is we had the first reading and first reading of a rental registration ordinance, and I'll let Nathan share more on that.
Yeah. What that ordinance, what it would do was establish the rental registration program within Yountville. It's not unlike what a lot of other communities are doing, where right now Yountville doesn't really have any toolkit or method of knowing how many rentals, whether for 1 month or for 70 years, there are in town. There's 0 registration. A lot of other communities either require a business license, others require safety inspections, some even require annual training of landlords where they come to training workshops. So what this program does, first and foremost, it's to protect the health and safety rights of tenants. And so what would require any landlord who's interested in renting their property would come and register with the town, so the town is aware of how many rental properties there are in town. And also, every 2 years there would be a inspection done by the building inspector just to make sure everything is still up to code and that all tenants are living in safe, hazardous-free areas. The vast part of this is a consequence of some regional as well as national events where we see what happens when long-term rental areas go unnoticed for months and years on end. And so we want to get out ahead of it. This is one way to do that. It also gives, on a less safety note, but on a code enforcement note, an extra resource to monitor the Airbnb and other online vacation rental posting platforms. We know that it is currently against town code to have a vacation rental of less than 30 days. But as of right now, without any kind of registration, it's nearly impossible to know exactly what's going on in every house. So this gives an extra toolkit to provide safety for all of our renting residents, as well as an extra resource for our code enforcement efforts.
Now, in some cases, cities and towns have required of the online rental companies to post and put out and verify the registration numbers of the property, and there's been pushback from those online companies. Has that settled out? Are they willing to do that, or only in certain circumstances?
Not familiar with the pushback that the online rental companies did, but what this program includes is anyone registered will be given a permit number, and any advertisement needs to have that permit number. So in the boxes in many of these online things where it says share a little bit about this property, just start off with permit number 73 or whatever, and then talk about it. Same thing with any print advertisements that you do or any other kind of posting. That will be a requirement of the program.
Excellent.
Is that program implemented anywhere near where we are that we're aware of? Like
To different degrees.
Napa, Salina, or Calistoga?
To different degrees, they require like business licenses if you are if you have a rental, and so you'd pay the annual business license fees that the same thing any restaurant or business in town would. This is the first in Napa County that includes the safety inspection.
Okay. What about long-term rental? You're including every rental.
If it's a rental, yes, it's ultimately for the health and safety of the tenants. Recently, with our staff at least, the most time-consuming and at times emotionally draining code enforcement cases relate to a relationship between a tenant and a landlord where the living conditions have been less than stellar.
Well, how do you monitor short-term rental not renting less than 30 days? I think that's
a big one. Right now, it's having a staff member constantly online,
Or-
Auditing online, yeah.
Or neighbors.
or neighbors
Responding.
doing
More
complaints.
importantly, neighbors.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
probably is
different-
better, because then we get evidence in that
Right.
sense.
Right.
But what this would do, anytime we see any kind of online posting, we'll see right there, do they have the permit number? If they
Well-
don't, that gives us the idea.
Yeah, we have neighbors doing that, and they always advertise, we follow the rules of 30 days, but I can tell they're not following it, so that is a big issue.
With this program, hopefully, ex-neighbor would come in and receive a registration number. And we'll, with these regular inspections for safety, we'll also get a better idea of how long-term these renters are.
And this ordinance is scheduled for second reading and adoption at the council's next meeting, next Tuesday.
Okay, anything else? Then I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.